All right, thank you so much for everybody that's still joining. I see we have 13 participants. If you're really new to Zoom, just want to remind you really quick that you'll see a couple of options at the bottom of your screen. You have the chat options. Please feel free to enter any comments that you have. But if you do have questions, please use the Q&A section. We will encourage you to use the Q&A section so we can actually get to your questions faster. But yeah, thank you so much for that. All right. We're just gonna wait a couple more minutes. I'm gonna share I'm actually, in the meantime, I'm gonna share a poll with everybody that has joined so far. So you'll see some questions on your screen. Feel free to answer them. You know, you have pretty much the whole hour to answer them. We wanna hear from you. I'm gonna go ahead and, while we wait, I'm just gonna go ahead and share a quick video with everybody.
A neighborway is the newest type of street in the city of Pittsburgh. A neighborway is a street where motor vehicle speeds and volumes are kept low to make it more comfortable for existing residents, while also making it safer to walk, ride a bike, and for kids to play. These traffic calming streets provide an alternate route to a major arterial road and have minimal impact on parking and the existing street layout. Whether you drive, walk, roll, or play, your street will be safer and your transportation options will improve. Neighborways create the connections toward a low-stress, all ages and abilities bike network. The route will include neighborhood traffic circles, wayfinding, and other traffic calming measures where appropriate.
All right, thank you so much for your answers. I see most of the participants tonight are mainly from Bloomfield and Friendship, which is great. We also have some other neighbors from the East and neighborhoods. And again, if you just joined this public meeting, I just want to remind you that if you're new to Zoom, there's a couple of options at the bottom of your screen. One of them will be the chat. Feel free to add any comments to the chat option, or we do encourage you to ask your questions on the Q&A section. We're gonna, the format for tonight is like a webinar format, which means that you don't necessarily see all the participants. You won't be able to see like their videos or their names. If you wanna maybe let your neighbors know that you're here, please feel free to do that on the chat. You can just say hi and people will see your name right away. So thank you. I see we have 25 participants. I'm just gonna, we can wait a couple more minutes and then we'll start the presentation. I'm just gonna play this again for the new people that just joined.
A neighborway is the newest type of street in the city of Pittsburgh. A neighborway is a street where motor vehicle speeds and volumes are kept low to make it more comfortable for existing residents, while also making it safer to walk, ride a bike, and for kids to play. These traffic calming streets provide an alternate route to a major arterial road and have minimal impact on parking and the existing street layout. Whether you drive, walk, roll, or play, your street will be safer and your transportation options will improve. Neighborways create the connections toward a low-stress, all ages and abilities bike network. The route will include neighborhood traffic circles, wayfinding, and other traffic calming measures where appropriate.
All right. So I just want to remind you again that I share a poll with you. So if you just sign in, you'll see some questions popping up on your screen. Just so you know, we want to like ask you like where you're from. I see that so far still a lot of people are from Bloomfield Friendship. The next question is, how did you hear about this meeting? Most people answer that they learned about this through social media. And the third question is, how do you travel around Pittsburgh? This is a multiple choice question. I see that a lot of like, people here use the sidewalk, also use bicycles and cars. So yeah, and transit, of course, that's great. The fourth question is like, where do you travel using this street? Mainly people use this street to reach other neighborhoods, which I think is great, is to like move around. Other people use it to go to school or work or to get home. So yeah, that's great. Please keep answering those questions and we'll show the results at the end. Again, I want to remind you that if you just joined this meeting, we're encouraging people to use the Q&A section. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, if you're new to Zoom, you'll see those tools at the bottom. The Q&A section is what we use to answer your questions. And we have the chat if you want to just say hi. I see that a lot of people are being nice and friendly with their neighbors already, introducing themselves, saying hi, which is great. And again, this meeting is the way we're doing this is as a webinar. So yeah, so you won't be able to see you know, the screens of your other neighbors. Also, we are not allowing people to talk just because we want to be respectful with everybody's time. We had this question being asked last night when we had a meeting in Point Breeze as well. For smaller meetings, it's nice to, you know, have everybody with their audio on so everybody can actually give their input. But since we have, you know, 50 plus people tonight, or hopefully we'll have them at some point tonight, we already have only 32. We want to be respectful with everybody's time, so please, yeah, ask your questions through the Q&A and ask any other comment that or enter any other comment that you want through the chat option. All right, so I think we are good to start.
Ricardo, did we want to introduce ourselves or should I get going and then we'll do that before the main presentation?
You know what? Let's do that really quick. Let's all introduce ourselves. Would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kim Lucas, and I work for the City of Pittsburgh's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, where I serve as the Assistant Director for Planning, Policy, and Permitting.
My name is Ricardo Solis, and I work for Healthy Right. I'm the Community Initiatives Manager, and I'm helping with outreach tonight.
Hi, I'm Cassandra Leopold. I am the newest hire with the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. I am the new principal planner in charge of active transportation.
Hi, my name is Eric Borer. I'm the Advocacy Director of Bike Pittsburgh, and I'll be helping moderate some questions tonight.
I'm Paige Anderson, and I work on the traffic engineering team in the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. And I also live in Friendship, so I'm neighbors with a lot of you.
Hi, I'm Chris Young with the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. I'm a transportation fellow and just up the hill in Squirrel Hill.
Awesome. Let me just go ahead and share my screen again.
Thanks, everybody. And again, thank you to everyone who has joined us to learn about the Bloomfield Friendship Neighborway. I see that we've got nearly 30 participants in addition to the panelists, and I'm really excited to introduce you to the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure's work and lay the foundation for the specific project that we're here to talk about tonight. Next slide. So first I want to lay the foundation and share with you the goals of DOMI. We have 5 goals that all wrap up into our underlying mission, which is to provide the physical mobility for people, residents, to achieve the economic mobility that they deserve. So our number 1 goal that is primary in everything we do is safety. We believe that no one should die or be seriously injured traveling on our roadways, regardless of whether they're choosing to walk, to drive, to ride a bike, or to take transit. Their trip should be a safe one. Our second goal is about accessibility. We want to make sure that every resident in the city of Pittsburgh has access to fresh fruits and vegetables within 20 minutes travel from their residence. That includes waiting time, even if they're taking public transportation. This is obviously not a transportation goal exclusively. It's something that also has to do with land use. And for those issues, we work closely with the Department of City Planning and other partners to make sure that our city can continue to grow in a way that is sustainable and accessible for all of its residents. Our third goal has to do with short trips. We know that today 40% of our trips that are taken within Pittsburgh that are 2 miles or shorter are taken by automobile. And we know that when people take their automobiles, they contribute to congestion and air pollution, which has public health impacts. And so we want to make sure that for very short trips, especially those less than 1 mile in length, that people have other options if they choose to take them. We want to make sure that trips can be achieved enjoyably, either by walking or biking or taking transit, if that's a choice that a constituent has available to them. Our fourth goal has to do with affordability. We know that housing costs are probably going to continue to rise, and we want to make sure that the combination of housing costs, transportation costs, and energy costs do not exceed 45% of any household's income. That means regardless of how much money you make, we want to make sure that you're not spending the majority of it on those basic needs, because there's other things that you need your resources for, such as fresh fruits and vegetables or perhaps higher education. And finally, Pittsburgh is a city that prides itself on being diverse and inclusive, and we want to make sure that our city streets reflect those values. Could you go back just one? Thanks, Ricardo. Okay, never mind, go forward one. I thought we skipped one for a second. I'm going to talk tonight a little bit about the project process that we are participating in right now. So the 3 basic steps are planning, design, and construction. Planning starts with conversations like the one we're going to have tonight. We also have a number of planning documents that got us to this meeting today. We have the Bike Plus plan, which we just released and adopted within the last week. Please check it out on our website. That plan introduces over 120 miles of new and improved bike facilities throughout the city. Community outreach is a component of every single step of this process. So right now, we're in planning and we're moving towards design, and we want your community's feedback on some of the different elements of the design that we're proposing this evening. And finally, construction. This is the goal that we hope to achieve in as quick of a fashion as possible. That's when we get to see the fruits of our labor. And through every step of this process, we will keep you informed. Next slide. As I mentioned, the Bike Plus plan was recently released and adopted by the city. This is the city's first bike plan in 20 years. And as I mentioned, it introduces 120 miles of improved or new bicycle connections. We wanted to make sure that we would have a robust and complete network of facilities for all ages and abilities to travel from one side of the city to the other. In addition to those facilities, there's 27 miles of new trails that have been proposed and supporting policies that range from maintenance of those trails, improvements to accessibility to bike parking, and strengthening the connection between taking a bike and getting on public transportation. You can find out more on our website. The address is on the bottom, pittsburghpa.gov, DOMI Bike Plan. Next slide. This is a screenshot of where we are today. I know it's pretty small to see, but if you just go ahead and Google DOMI and Bike Plan, you'll be able to find high quality maps as well as the full document. But on the left side is where we're starting with. We do have a great foundation of trails in our community and some protected facilities and other types of bicycle options. On the right, you can see where we're shooting for, that 120 miles of new and improved connections that are in all corners of our city. Next slide. What the plan does is it identifies lines on a map, and in some cases, thick lines where the specific street has not yet been identified. What it doesn't specify is what those lines will ultimately become. That's where community input and design and engineering requirements come into play. On the top left, you can see what is considered the gold standard for accessibility and ease of use and comfort for cyclists and pedestrians. And those are shared use paths and trails. As you work through to the bottom right, you can see the different types of facilities, all of which are represented in the city of Pittsburgh today, from protected bike lanes, where a bike lane is separated by physical infrastructure, to a buffered bike lane where there is just additional space between motor vehicles and the bike lane. On the bottom right, you can see a picture of a neighborway. Now, a speed hump is shown in that photo, but that's not necessarily going to be a part of every neighborway that we see in our city. There's a whole toolkit of tools that are available to us, from speed humps to traffic circles and roundabouts, that are potentially going to be used on neighborways. And the goal is to ultimately slow down the speed of that roadway so that it becomes safer for all users, whether they choose to walk, to bike, to drive their car, or to take public transit. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about the Move Forward PGH program, which we just launched within the last week. Hopefully some of you have already seen ads on social media, perhaps on billboards or on a bus wrap, but it is a program and initiative of the City of Pittsburgh's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, in partnership with Bike Pittsburgh, which is the local bike advocacy group, and Healthy Ride, the local bike share program. MoveForwardPGH.org is where you can find more information about the project that we're talking about tonight and all the other projects. It is an acceleration program. The idea is that we've got 120 new miles that we hope to build out over 10 years, but with a really rapid approach in the first couple years, we can build a lot of those miles quickly. And so we're here tonight under the Move Forward brand. And again, this is a City of Pittsburgh program in partnership with Bike Pittsburgh and Healthy Ride. And we hope that you'll be able to check us out online for more information. And with that, I'm going to pass the proverbial mic over to Ricardo and Paige to talk more about Neighborways and the project that we're proposing in your community.
Thank you so much, Kim. Yeah, so I'm just gonna talk a little bit about Neighborways as a whole, and then I'm gonna pass the mic to Paige to get more specific into the project for Bloomfield Friendship. And yeah, as we heard before, Neighborways could be a street or a series of connected streets, Bloomfield Carrefour, for example, where more vehicle speeds and values are kept low, which makes it more comfortable for residents to either, walk around, bicycle, or even drive. The nice thing about Neighborways is that they're located on low volume residential streets, and this also makes it hard for people to use them as a cut through. Something that I like to point out about Neighborways is that they have a really minimal impact. So this means that there won't be no parking spaces removed. Also, this means that there won't be any dedicated bike lanes installed. So I think that's something nice to add. And yeah, so whether you bike, walk, roll, or play, these streets will be safer and they'll make it easier to move around. So I just want to take a quick pause to remind you that if you just joined this meeting, we're encouraging people to use the Q&A section to ask your questions. And if you just want to comment anything, please use the chat. I'm just going to go ahead and pass it to Paige so she can tell you more about this specific project.
Hi there. So to go off of what Ricardo said, these Neighborways are, what they primarily do is identify existing routes that provide connectivity for a lot of cyclists. As I said earlier, I live in this neighborhood and I bike on Coral nearly every day, especially when I was commuting to work. But what we try to do is make them even safer so that they are more comfortable and less stressful for bikes and pedestrians to use, but does not limit the ability for motorists to continue to use the route as they do. I'm going to go through some of the tools that we use throughout it or can use. The design has not been finalized for this Neighborway, so please, we'll give you opportunities to give your feedback, and we'd love to hear about which tools stand out to you and what you might see on this Neighborway as it comes to fruition. The first of these, the tool that you will definitely see is pavement markings. You probably recognize these share rows. What they do is they alert motorists that there will be cyclists along the route. They also help guide cyclists through the route, especially on these Neighborways, to help them know where is the safest place for them to go and how they can get to their destinations. There'll also be plenty of signage accompanying it. Most of this signage will be guidance and wayfinding signage that will be bike and pedestrian scale, so that it will help, again, help cyclists navigate things comfortably, alert motorists to the presence, an increased presence of bicycles and pedestrians, and help remind people to share the road and act safely. There'll also be some regulatory signage throughout the route that will help alert people to how to use the route effectively. The most dangerous part of most of these neighborway routes is the intersections. There's a lot of tools that we can use to make intersections safer. Some of those tools are bump outs. What bump outs do is they can either use concrete or just paint to help alert neighbors and people parking that within 30 feet of an intersection is illegal to park in by according to code. And the reason for that is because parking too close to an intersection impedes upon sight lines. So when you keep those sight lines open, it creates safer conditions for all users as they approach the intersection, so they can really understand everyone that's in the intersection and act more safely. Similarly, crosswalks help to alert drivers and other users of the road of increased presence of pedestrians. And what we can do with crosswalks is we can improve them to be high visibility so that they're even more visible at all times of the day and safer. The newest intersection improvement and the newest tool in our toolkit for Neighborways is traffic circles, and we are proposing 4 of these along Coral. What these traffic circles do, they're also called mini roundabouts. They're a lot smaller than what you may think of when you think of roundabouts, and they are interventions that we can put into existing intersections without changing the curb lines. They require drivers and cyclists to slow down and move to the right, circulate around. What they do is they reduce chances of crashes. In other cities where they have done this, they've reduced collisions by up to 90% and reduced injury-causing collisions by up to 97%. At this point, we will also, it will be a yield condition instead of a stop condition. But you yield to people already in the circle, and it creates a safer environment for people traveling through those intersections without having to necessarily rely on traffic enforcement. This is an example of some of them. They do have a mountable curb, which allows, for larger vehicles that may be using the intersection, we do want them to be able to travel through the intersection. And with these mountable curbs, it will still be very possible for larger vehicles, dumpster trucks, emergency vehicles to still travel through the intersection. It will not inhibit that, but it will make sure that people are traveling slowly and safely. Another tool that we already have on Edmond Street is the speed humps. At this point, we're not proposing any additional speed humps to this route, but Edmonds applied to our traffic calming program last year and got some speed humps, and we've gotten some really good feedback and seen some really great results at reducing speeds for drivers along those so that other users of the street feel more comfortable and are more safe. There are many neighborways that we're proposing throughout the city. They are 2 of them that are nearly are complete or nearly complete are in central Lawrenceville along Willow and Hatfield, in the south side, including a ramp underneath the Birmingham Bridge that opened last week, if you have not seen it yet, so to help cyclists and pedestrians avoid some of the dangerous intersections on Carson. Also, we have one proposed on North Euclid, which is in East Liberty and Highland Park. We have Reynolds Street in Point Breeze, this one in Bloomfield and Friendship, some produced in the Manchester neighborhoods, and Goldway in North Oakland and Polish Hill. I'll go a little bit more in depth with the proposal that we have for Bloomfield and Friendship. Again, this design has not been complete, and we would love to hear your feedback. Specifically, what are for those of you who do walk and cycle on these streets already, we'd love to hear about what are your primary safety concerns, where do you feel unsafe and why? and maybe what tools appeal to you the most. And I'll go through a little bit about the initial proposal that we got using data, including crash data, speed data, and 311 requests that we have gotten throughout the years. So this is the initial proposal. One of the primary features is that we will be paving Comrie Way so that it is more accessible. Right now, those of you who have seen it know that it's quite difficult to perhaps even walk on, if not bike or drive. So we'll be paving it. Edmond Street, those speed humps already exist, but we will be working to improve crossings at Matilda. Oh, sorry. Can you go back to that map? There it is. Thank you. So we will be improving crossings at Matilda, Weinbittle, and Aiken. Those are not great intersections for traffic circles, so we're exploring more creative solutions to how we can help alert cars to the existence of other users. Matilda in particular stood out to us due to crash data. There have been 8 crashes there in the past 5 years, which is the highest of any intersection along any of our neighborways. And we are also hoping to create a diverter there so that it will prohibit motorists from traveling along Comrie and instead encourage them to use routes more appropriate for motorists, and namely Penn Ave. Similarly, Weinbittle and Aiken, we've seen plenty of 311 requests and concerns from the community due to the conditions already there. They aren't great. They don't really work for traffic circles, so we're exploring other ways to help slow down vehicles, discourage illegal maneuvers, and create connectivity for bicyclists and pedestrians. And then for traffic circles, we are proposing them at South Pacific Ave, South Atlantic Ave, Roop, and Stratford. I wanted to talk a little bit about our traffic circles, and because they are a brand new tool that the city of Pittsburgh hasn't really seen before, there are a few traffic circles existing in the city. Namely, I can think of Reynolds at Homewood near Frick Park, but that one is much larger than what we are proposing. So these new ones are, while people are unfamiliar, we want to make sure that, and we are unfamiliar with installing them, we want to make sure that we're doing them right. So what we're doing is on North Euclid, in the next couple weeks, you will see pilots for pilot intersections, traffic circles, where we will be installing them with temporary materials. And during the month-long pilot period, we will be out there watching people use them. We will be putting up traffic cameras to record data, and we will be reaching out with our ADA community and the Port Authority to make sure that these traffic circles work for all users and effectively traffic calm and create a safer condition than what is out there already. Eventually, we will replace those pilots and with concrete traffic circles, and that is what we will be installed on this Neighborway. These concrete traffic circles are look a lot like this rendering that Chris put together, and they are yeah, this is an example of what they will look like. The traffic circles range from 10 feet to 16 feet in diameter right now, what we're looking at. We want to, we're using this pilot to help make sure that we get the size just right. Again, we don't want to prohibit use. We want it to be usable for all existing users, but at adequate, safe speeds, and create a safer condition for all the users of the intersection. Traffic circles are something that many of you may have seen throughout the United States and internationally. I think the city that comes to most people's minds initially is the city of Seattle, which has been doing them since the early 1990s and now has over 1,200 of them throughout their city. We wanted to show some examples of the different ways that they look like and how beautiful they can be.
All right, thank you so much, Paige, for that. So yeah, I just want to remind you again that we're going to move ahead to the Q&A section. If you just recently joined, please ask your questions through the Q&A section. If you want to use the chat, you could do it to add any other comment that you want. We have this meeting until 7 p.m. So I'll keep, reminding you that whenever we have 5 minutes left and all the other questions that we won't be able to reply, we'll be following up with you via email and answer those directly. All right, Eric, would you like to tell us?
Sorry about that. I was looking. Yeah. So we have two questions from Larry and Barbara about the traffic circles and the large vehicles. I know you went into it a bit, Paige, but school buses, et cetera, we'll be able to navigate around them. And they're specifically worried about that buses will be crossing Coral at 2 locations during the Penn Ave reconstruction.
Right. Oh, and I didn't talk about the Penn Avenue reconstruction, sorry. So the Penn Avenue reconstruction is the Penn Avenue project that's going to be coming up in the next couple years. And part of the reason we want to get on this project soon is we want to create a valuable detour and a safe alternative for bikes and pedestrians so they don't have to compete with some of the users on Penn Ave. We are aware of the buses coming through, namely I know Roop at Coral is one of them. We use, we have software that helps us determine how vehicles travel around, how they turn through these intersections. It's called auto turn. And we are using that to make sure that they, buses, school buses, larger vehicles can travel through these intersections. And as I said before, it would have to be at an appropriate speed. And also there will be this curb is mountable it's a 2 foot, 3 foot wide curb, I think 2 feet wide. That is mountable. So, vehicles making especially left-hand turns, which can be a little tricky on these circles, will be able to do so.
All right. Barbara was wondering if there's if you have traffic data or crash data specifically at Roop and Coral, and are you just trying to slow down traffic by installing a mini roundabout?
Slowing traffic is certainly one of the things that we're trying to do. Also, by putting the circle in, we are prohibiting illegal dangerous maneuvers such as running stop signs. I actually live very close to Roop and Coral, so I'm aware that this is definitely can be a dangerous intersection for aggressive driver when there are aggressive drivers in particular. There is crash data. It is all I can pull it up, but it is also public. It's all through PennDOT, PCIT. You can see all reported crashes. We do find that cyclist crashes and pedestrian crashes tend to be underreported. So we have, some anecdotal evidence that cyclists then is even reported there. But we are using crash data. Let me see, I actually think I have it pulled up right here. In the last 5 years, there actually haven't been any crashes at Coral and Roop, at least with motor vehicle crashes. That doesn't mean that there has not been pedestrian and cyclist crashes that have been unreported.
Okay. Jennifer's asking, will there still be 4-way stop signs at each of the 4 traffic circle intersections?
The plan is that we will replace the stop signs with yield signs.
Okay. Bruce is asking, I know this might just be a name, but can we include Garfield? This is as much a Penn Avenue safe alternative for Garfield as it is for Bloomfield and Friendship. They should be included in the outreach. Also as a point of equity, since Garfield has very few bike infrastructure compared to neighbors south of Penn Avenue.
Thanks, Bruce. That's great feedback. Yeah, we called it the Bloomfield Friendship Neighborway because those are the neighborhoods it's actually in. The signs will actually just say Neighborway. They won't actually indicate, in particular, the name of the project is, as we're designing it, that is what we're calling it. But I think that's great feedback. We'll try to do better at doing outreach with those communities. In particular, I know Friendship is also similarly right up against Shadyside and East Liberty. And, this is certainly not just a project for the Bloomfield Friendship community. We only called it that because it's actually in Friendship in Bloomfield.
Okay, so Barbara is asking, for maintaining planters in the traffic circles, if volunteers will be responsible for caring for the plants, where will the water supply come from? How does the water get to the planter?
I think that our hope would be that, well, first of all, these don't have to include planters. We do rely on the community to agree to help maintain us if that is something the community is interested in. And from initial conversations with community groups, it does seem to be something that people are interested in. I think also we would hope that we would find, native plants that would be more easily maintained without, necessarily requiring people to water them all the time. I'm not a landscape architect, so I can't speak to that too much, but we have been working with our landscape architects in the Department of Public Works to provide a plant list that will not require too much maintenance. Although, again, if the community is concerned about that maintenance and we don't have volunteers coming up to are interested in that, then these don't need to include landscaping. They can be entirely concrete.
Okay. Abe is asking, love this idea. Have you considered raising the road at the most dangerous intersections?
That is something, raised intersections is something we're concerned. Unfortunately, can be very difficult to manage stormwater with, and also can be prohibitively expensive. But we are exploring other ways to have that effect anyways, or do something similar to it, even if it is just simply having the same effect of alerting drivers that they are about to cross an intersection that is shared with more pedestrians and cyclists than they may typically see, especially along that Comrie corridor along Penn. Thanks for that feedback, though.
DJ is asking about Comrie, specifically between South Matilda, South Millvale, and Gross can be, quote, carefully driven as a two-way, but narrows noticeably between Gross and Weinbettel. Any easy way to mitigate that without expensive widening?
Yeah, we're certainly not looking into widening Comrie by any means, but we are hoping to instead, discourage motorists from using the road because, cyclists and pedestrians can certainly pass each other comfortably along it. We want to make sure that it is a safe condition.
Paul's asking about the on Euclid traffic circle tests. He just wants to know where they're going to be or information about them. So should we just leave that in the chat?
Yeah, certainly. We'll put that in the chat. There's going to be 4 intersections. We try to pick 4 intersections that represent, diverse conditions, including like one of them has buses going through it. One of them is wider than others. We wanted to pick some that may be more representative of all the intersections we may be using these tools in the future. And we'll put the fact sheet, I think, in the chat, and you'll see exactly which of those 4 intersections on North Euclid that you can go and see those pilots and experience them yourself.
Okay. Bruce is asking, is signage in the scope? Would be great to have signage on Penn Ave to let pedestrians and cyclists know there's a safer alternative a block away.
That's great feedback.
So I guess wayfinding from Penn Avenue.
Yeah. Right now we're initially thinking about, wayfinding from the existing corridor, but I do think that could be, could be beneficial. I think our priority is definitely connecting it to those existing connections. So I'm thinking, I do think that's good feedback, and we can think about ways to implement that.
Okay, I'm going to go right back to Comrie again. It says, can you give more detail on the plans for Comrie Way as it stretches west from Matilda? It's currently one way. Is that going to change for bicycles and for all traffic? That's from John.
Yeah, so we would create, would become a two-way condition. What we are hoping to do to kind of counteract any increase in traffic is that we're hoping to put a diverter on Matilda, so that way you cannot travel, in a vehicle through Matilda. Similarly, you wouldn't be able to turn left from Matilda onto Comrie, so that we can, have a two-way condition without, encouraging more drivers than are already there. I do think that from my personal experience and from feedback we've gotten from the community, we do see sometimes cars traveling along Comrie to avoid some of these other roads, namely Penn. So we do want to just discourage that.
Okay. Susan's asking, does the design incorporate suggestions made by Bloomfield Livable Streets? Were there particular suggestions that could not be implemented?
Yeah, we did take all the feedback from Bloomfield Livable Streets, and for those of you that contributed to that, thank you very much. It really did. It is something we brought into the design, we brought to the consultants. It was really, really wonderful feedback, and we did take it into consideration. I can't remember it was a little while ago that I was looking at it, so there were some that considerations that are unfortunately out of our prohibitively expensive and we cannot accommodate in our budget. For example, those raised intersections that someone recommended along Comrie. We did take into consideration many of the Bloomfield Livable Streets feedback, and it was really wonderful. So thank you everyone who contributed to that.
So there's two that are similar. They're just one, glad to see features added to South Aiken and Coral. Did you look at incorporating Latham and Kruger into pedestrian improvement plans, as well as Gross Street? Because people have been asking for traffic calming on Gross as well.
So for right now, we found these funds that we got to implement these projects are to implement the Bike Plus plan. So we really are focusing all of our efforts on these routes that create the most connectivity. I would encourage those of you with concerns for streets that are not on these neighborways and don't create these connections to apply to our traffic calming program or submit 311s. I don't want to, I would love to traffic calm the entire neighborhood, but these funds and this Move Forward campaign and, is to create these connections, and Coral and Comrie and the routes that we spoke about in this map are the ones that do that. But also please put that in your feedback too for the survey. I think we can, certainly look into that, but 311 and traffic calming applications would be best.
Okay. Emily is asking about, she walked the Neighborway in the south side, says the signs are cute but small and from a distance look vaguely like signs about street parking. Finding signs was difficult as they were sparse and sometimes hidden by foliage. I cannot imagine I would have noticed them if I wasn't trying to walk along the Neighborway. Will there be any other wayfinding measures implemented on Coral?
So the south side one was our first ever Neighborway, and we actually are I don't know if you noticed, I said nearly complete, and part of that is because we are hoping to enhance the signage. The signage that is out there now was designed many years ago, so we are hoping to enhance the signage with wayfinding. It will be pedestrian and cyclist scale, because that is the people that we are hoping to kind of tailor this street towards. But I think that, that's good feedback, and I agree that the Southside Neighborway signage can definitely be improved, and it is our plan to do so sometime this summer.
Okay. Edmond and Comrie to South Millvale. It sounds as though the plan is to block this route at South Matilda, sorry. This will force us onto Penn Avenue or Friendship Avenue to Gross to Comrie to South Millvale. Normally, both of these routes are very congested and undesirable. This will also increase traffic time. Is there a way to improve safety at Comrie South Matilda other than blocking the through movement on Comrie for cars? Did you
Having
catch all
trouble
that?
following. Yeah, that's a lot. I hope you'll submit that to the survey. I would like to, because I'd like to think about that a little bit more.
Okay.
At this point, I will say we are hoping to take, this is especially Comrie is a shared street condition. There's no sidewalks, so it will be, pedestrians and cyclists use the entire route, and we would like to, not necessarily prohibit cars on it, but, discourage that use. But I would love to think about that a little bit more because I'm having trouble following that question.
Okay. Well, John wants to also following that, wants to know if they're what changes are planned for the intersection of Comrie at Friendship, where the Neighborway ends.
Right. Yeah. Comrie at Friendship is a little tricky, but right now we are, it will be the actual Comrie intersection will be, we'll have gateway treatments to notify people that it is a neighborway. There's no crossing there that we are going to have difficulty, if we want to pursue this in the future as like extending the neighborhood beyond it as a second phase. That's certainly something we can consider, but the scope of this project does end there. But, we can certainly look at other sorts of improvements, whether it be, improving crosswalks, improving lighting, improving things like that. So I hope that you'll submit that in your feedback.
Okay, Emma wants to know if you've specified the locations for bump outs. All intersections or just some? I feel like crossing Gross is one of the toughest sight lines.
Oh, that's great feedback. Please put that in the survey. I think right now, we're going to avoid bump outs at places where we don't think that they are necessary, but, we certainly can include them on, intersections that are the most necessary. And in particular, all of those Comrie crossings, I do believe we are considering them, although we may begin with, making sure that there are no parking signs and, yellow curb paint first, and then kind of monitoring that and seeing how they go. And if it's a reoccurring issue, bump outs are kind of, and also bump outs can look different ways. So they can be just painted. And then if people are painting, parking on the paint, we can put on flex posts. And if they become really problematic, we can always make them out of concrete. So, those bump outs look like a lot of things. I would love to hear more feedback on where you think the bump outs are most necessary, because I think that is something that the community can certainly knows better than we do. And I'd love to hear that feedback.
Okay. Larry wants to know whether you're taking into account stormwater flow and how this might be affected by the traffic circles.
We are not explicitly looking into stormwater flow, but something that we have talked about before is that, adding land, especially if we are going to add landscaping, that will can act as increasing stormwater treatment. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has anything else to say about that, but at this point, that's not, we aren't planning on diverting any stormwater with these interventions.
Joseph wants to know about the benefit of removing the stop signs and replacing them with yield signs in reference to the speed of vehicles.
Well, when we put in these traffic circles and create these yield conditions, first I'll say that a lot of these stop signs, people realistically already are simply yielding. And so what we're doing by putting this obstruction in the middle is forcing people to slow down and, creating at that point, a stop sign isn't required because there's a physical obstruction in the middle of the street that will prohibit, with design rather than relying on enforcement, prohibit people from, creating dangerous maneuvers. And the yield condition, is how these function. And I think a lot of, and it is an overall much safer condition. Stop signs with a traffic circle, unless there's, a really huge discrepancy in the volumes of the cross streets, like a stop sign with a traffic circle is excessive and actually, makes it work less well. But these traffic circles, oftentimes don't even have, we were putting yield signs on them because they are new to the city, but in a lot of these other cities, they actually don't even have yield signs. They're completely unsigned, and they still have, results such as 90% reduction in collisions and 97% reduction in injury causing collisions. So stop signs, typically aren't making people safer, and these should.
Jennifer is asking about the intersection of South Pacific and Coral, and is wondering if semi-tractor trailers will still be able to back onto South Pacific from the Aldi Family Dollar stores. This has been a contentious issue with nearby neighbors because the trucks, planning documents stated that the trucks would not need to back up through the alley or through the intersection to meet the loading docks, but 4 to 6 trucks back up daily through the intersection.
Yeah, this is something I've actually heard about in conversations with the community. Unfortunately, we cannot, dictate exactly where trucks will go. And even if we did put up no truck signs, those aren't largely effective. But we would love to hear more about these movements, because it is something I've heard about from nearby neighbors. And I would hope that traffic circles would sort of discourage these movements. I do believe, I would love to hear more about this, because we can certainly do more outreach with, nearby, the users, the places that these trucks are going to try and talk about that. And I have heard about this issue before.
Okay. Walt's wondering whether you have thoughts on deploying mini traffic circles in non-neighborway corridors.
I think that's something we can certainly pursue, in the future, giving the issue is always going to be, budget, but traffic calming, I know, has always been one of the most requested capital budget requests from all these communities. And I think as we start to get these tools, use these tools more often, and the community becomes more comfortable with them, we can certainly, they aren't reserved just for neighborways. Right now, we're using the funding to create these neighborways, and they're a wonderful tool for that. But we can use them. Yeah, they certainly can be used on any four-way intersection. So I think in the future, should we have funding, should we have community desire, that's certainly something we could look at. But for these neighborway projects, we're really trying to focus on these bike and pedestrian connections.
Abe's asking if improved lighting is part of the plan.
At this point, we haven't identified any locations that really need improved lighting, although I would love to hear if that's something, some of these locations could probably use it. And I'd love to hear that in our feedback, because we do have some funds that we could use for that purpose, and improved lighting certainly creates safer conditions. So again, that's feedback I would hope that you guys could help provide us of where you think that could be most useful, and we can certainly explore that.
Okay, Lee is asking about traffic circles again. What has the transition been like in other cities from stop signs to yield signs with the traffic circles, and how the traffic circles would affect pedestrian crossing?
Yeah, this is something that we're hoping to explore a little bit more with the pilot. In other cities, I will actually say they haven't used yield signs. They've gone completely, they get rid of the stop signs and don't have yield signs. All they have is, maybe a keep right sign, or you saw some of those examples. There's a lot of different ways that different cities use different signage to indicate these traffic circles. Sometimes it's just, an object marker sign that says, warns that it's there. They've actually seen that, it does increase safety for pedestrians. So, but we do want to make sure that that's the case. We're trying to size these accordingly, so that way we don't have a ton of conflict with a pedestrian. We don't have these pedestrian conflicts, and even if there aren't the crosswalks there, we don't want to create those conflicts. So we are certainly, doing this the goal of this is for pedestrian safety and cyclist safety. So we want to make sure that we are creating safer conditions, and that's certainly something we are monitoring with this pilot project, and is our goal with these final designs.
Okay, so This one is going south on Stratford and turning left onto Friendship can be difficult. Is there another road at Friendship that will have safer sightlines, such as Roop or Fairmount?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what specifically it's asking.
Friendship.
Going south on Stratford and turning left onto Friendship can be difficult. Is there another road at Friendship that will have safer sightlines like Roop or Fairmount?
So right now, as I said before, we're focusing our efforts and traffic calming efforts along these Coral and Comrie routes. However, if it's sightlines are the issue, we can certainly look into ways like bump outs or no parking signs to improve those sightlines. So please put that in your feedback, and we can certainly look into that, because I know Friendship is, a lot of people have concerns about Friendship, and I think we can certainly make improvements there outside of this Neighborway project.
Okay, yeah, so this is like this is sort of related to that one.
Okay.
It was a Bloomfield, maybe this adds a little clarity. Bloomfield Livable Streets suggested redirecting bike riders to Roop to Friendship left turn instead of sending them through potentially hazardous Stratford to Friendship as they travel toward East Liberty. Is this one of the suggestions that was adopted?
Yeah, I think I'll need to think that one through a little bit more.
Tom is wondering what the timeline of construction is.
Yeah, we are hoping to get this, trying to coordinate with other things and other efforts. But yeah, this summer is the plan.
All right, Michael's asking if there's plans for bump outs at all intersections with Comrie. Right now, there are lots of cars parked right up to the intersection that obstructs the sightline.
I do believe that is something, we are trying to incorporate into design, is all of the Comrie intersections in particular, since they are uncontrolled intersections. We are hoping to at least, improve sightlines is a big part of that. Certainly limiting illegal parking on that Comrie intersection is part of the design, yes.
Okay, I'm going to combine these two questions here. Wondering, Larry and Emily are wondering about sort of the publicity to the general public, specifically the driving public, as well as outreach to the disability community, how we've done that outreach.
We've been working with Hillary Roman, our ADA coordinator, and we are planning, especially around as we explore these traffic circles in particular, working with those communities to make sure that this is something that will benefit all of us. I think maybe some of my teammates can comment a little more on general outreach that initiatives that we've been doing. Anyone?
So as part of our Bike Plus plan, we hosted a series of open houses and fielded hundreds and hundreds of responses to help talk specifically about some of these corridors. As part of our pedestrian safety action plan, which we hope to wrap up within the next month or so, we also engaged in a series of workshops with residents and stakeholders to find out more about where some of the challenging locations are in the city. And as we move forward, now that we've welcomed Cassandra about a month ago to the team, she's very focused on making sure that accessibility is at the forefront of our bike ped work especially.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to make sure some of my first duties to really get to know the task force focused on disabilities rights and ADA compliance. And so like Paige was saying, we had reached out to Hillary Roman, our ADA coordinator, and we are currently putting together a stakeholder kind of group to hopefully evaluate or just come in and look at the pilot once it's been active for about a month and really just have consistent feedback with DOMI projects and that stakeholder group, just because it's so important.
Before the next question, I just want to say really quick that we have only a couple minutes left for this meeting. If we, for some reason, don't answer your question, we'll be able to, we'll follow with you, and also, or most future questions we'll be having in the Move Forward website as well. So, thanks.
Okay, I'm going to skip a couple that are a little bit more on the comment side of a question, just to try to, and then if we have time, we'll get back to those. But so someone wants to know, where in the DOMI site can we find the proposed plan maps?
So the DOMI website, it's on the current projects page. If you just Google DOMI current projects, you'll get there, and there's fact sheets. There's also a brand new website, the Move Forward website, that I think is going to be enhanced, and we're still developing, but we'll certainly have more details. But the fact sheet can definitely be found on DOMI current project, which if you just Google, you'll find.
Oh, and I'm putting it into the chat right now.
Thanks, Cassandra.
Okay, it's in the chat. Someone's asking if there's a pilot phase to this one.
We are not planning a pilot phase at this one. A lot of these intersections are very similar to Euclid, so we're trying to use that pilot to sort of indicate to us, how we can do these better, or do these, correctly and to benefit everyone the most.
Okay, another generalized question is, I may have missed this in the presentation, but will the right-of-way be given to the neighborway? Not exactly sure which right-of-way that means.
So by creating these yield conditions as some of these, I'm thinking of traffic circles in particular, the right-of-way goes to whoever's in the traffic circle first. So there's no priority given to any of those 4 intersections. Along Comrie, those are, I think most of those are already, those are uncontrolled intersections, and we're not affecting the right-of-way there, but we are going to try to, increase awareness and create safer conditions so that people know that there are shared users of that intersection.
Okay. Another generalized question from Barbara. In other cities, how have young children handled crossing around the traffic circles? Are they okay with them usually?
So the crossings of the traffic circles for pedestrians on sidewalks largely goes, unchanged. The crosswalk, even if they are unmarked crosswalks, they still exist as crosswalks, and they still have the right of way. And these yield conditions does create a much safer, a much safer environment with motorists and people traveling through the intersection slower and more safely. So it will increase safety, and these existing, even if they're unmarked, these existing crosswalks, are maintained.
Okay. Another general question is more like, how will drivers from outside the city understand what it means when they see a sign that says Neighborway?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if they will totally understand, but these Neighborway signs are pedestrian and pedestrian scale, and there will be plenty of, the traffic calming. People don't need to know it's a neighborway for the traffic calming to work. So the traffic calming, the traffic circles are, self-enforcing, and the traffic, some of these traffic calming measures, you don't need to know it's a neighborway. The neighborway is primarily, bike and pedestrian scale. So if these outside users are coming to the city and they're biking and walking, they will see these signs, and I hope that it'll be, with the sharrows and the signage and all of these tools used together in conjunction, I hope that it will be implied.
All right, I think we should be good to go. How do you guys feel?
Feel okay. I hope I've answered your
The rest of the questions
right?
are, yeah. I was gonna say, the rest of the questions are really specific, and we can make sure to get back to you on those after the meeting.
Yeah, we want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. It's a beautiful day out, and thank you so much for being here with us. Don't forget to enter your input through the survey, which has been shared by Cassandra. Thank you for that. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your night.
You as well. Bye, Ricardo. Bye, Chris. Bye, everybody.
Bye.